Hi, my name is Monique, and I am a therapist here with Nexus Youth and Family Services. And today we're going to be talking about processing through big changes. So, the first thing to remember is that change is a guaranteed part of life. It's something that we are all going to go through at some point or another. And it's important to remember that not all change is bad. There is good change. But sometimes when change happens, it can happen in such a big way that we aren't necessarily prepared for, or in a way that we're not expecting. And so when that happens, it can make navigating your path moving forward seem really difficult and overwhelming. But a way that we can kind of help counteract that and feel more prepared is by providing ourselves with tools to be able to start processing that change so that you can adapt more easily. So today we're going to focus some time on some tips on how to help process through some big changes. So a first tip is processing what you are able to control. So when change happens, it can leave us feeling helpless because we're feeling overwhelmed, it's new. But at some point, we're going to have to accept that the change is happening. And what we can do to make that not seem so negative or overwhelming is try and focus on what we still can control in that situation. And so, for example, some things that we can control in the midst of change is we can control how we react to situations. We can control how we are starting each day. We're able to control how nice we are to others and to ourselves. And so it's comforting to know that even in the midst of all of that change that may be going on around us, that there are still things that we are able to control. Next is being able to write out your feelings on paper. And so when change is happening, it is easy to feel like our brain is just constantly racing with what's going on and trying to keep up with that. And so we can feel overwhelmed. We can kind of overthink, and our brain is just full of so much of what's going on. And so a way that's helpful to process this change is to start writing things down. And so that can be in-depth journaling throughout the day or at night. That can look like just writing down a quick list of, what we're feeling, what we're thinking. It can also look like writing a letter to ourselves or writing a letter to someone else. The important thing is just to try and get it all out on paper. A third tip is to keep up your self-care when you can. I know that when life seems different, when it's difficult, when it's overwhelming, it's easier to want to try and stay, in bed or on the sofa and avoid what's going on. But unfortunately, that doesn't quite help the situation. But what does help is it's important to keep up with your normal habits and routines as much as possible. I know that in the midst of change, your routine can look completely different. But incorporating even just small and similar self-care habits from before the change that work personally for you can really help give you the mental clarity to be able to process through the big changes. And so what this can look like is, going on a walk after dinner. It can look like showering. It can look like doing laundry or cooking your favorite meal, something that's going to just help you continue to process this, and some familiarity is really helpful. A fourth tip is finding support. And so when we're going through changes right now, there's a good chance that someone feels or has felt the same way that you're feeling. And so that is such a good thing to know because it helps us not feel alone. And so depending on what you're going through, you can reach out to friends or family, but there's also support groups or even mental health professionals that you can reach out to and just really have someone there that will listen and provide support to be able to help you through any transition that you're walking through. A fifth tip is to try and tune into the good, no matter what kind of change has happened or that you're going through. And most likely, there's some sort of grief that coincides with processing it. Even in the good changes, like getting a new job, there can still be grief in that. You can be grieving not seeing your old coworkers that you might have had good relationships with, or not even having that familiarity that you're used to. And so there's a balance of allowing yourself to feel that grief, but also not getting stuck in a negative spiral where more of that fear and that anguish comes up. But instead, it's us trying to retrain our brain to focus even on the smallest things that bring us joy, and even challenging ourselves to reframe challenges as a negative thing, and see them as learning or growing opportunities. A sixth tip for processing change is to make plans. Now, it's totally okay if you are an incredibly organized person. But when you're processing big changes, it can be helpful to focus on planning. You don't have to stick to the plan perfectly. You can make adjustments. That's completely fine. But something small of what your day or what your week will look like can help get rid of any uncertainty that's happening in the midst of all the other changes that are going on. And lastly, the final tip is think of your strengths. And so changes tend to challenge us and they test us. And it's likely that you'll grow from whatever it is that you're going through and what you're trying to process. And so reminding yourself as often as possible that you're strong, you're capable, you will make it through this can be really helpful. And it's important to remember that you've already made it through past challenges and situations. And so that's really encouraging too. And with these challenges and changes that you're facing, it helps build resilience. And so just a couple of fast facts here. It's reported that people that have journaled have more significant satisfactions in their life over those who have not. And so that was one of our tips that we talked about. Journaling, just getting it all out of your brain onto paper, is really helpful because those thoughts aren't just sitting in our brain. We're starting to let them out. Even if we don't journal a whole lot, that's okay. It's just kind of getting into that routine and that rhythm of trying to process. Another fast fact is adults who avoided some of these problems and struggles with those challenges, they actually struggled with depression later on than those who sought out ways to cope. And coping can look like any of those 7 tips that were mentioned previously. And for teenagers, it actually showed another fast fact that when they have support from family members or friends or support groups or even a mental health professional like we talked about, they are way less likely to have any depressive symptoms and have a lasting positive effect in being able to help deal with the challenges in their life. And so they are building that resiliency, again, that we talked about. And so there are some tools to be able to help you thrive. Mental Health America actually has a screening that you can do. And so what you're able to do is you go in, you check off the symptoms you're feeling. And the great thing about this is it's free, it's confidential, and it's anonymous. And so being able to do this screening is one way to work on your mental health, along with all the other tips that we mentioned before. And then once you have your results, you'll actually be given information and other resources that can help you start to feel better. There's other resources as well, like Supportive. It's a peer network, and they have community chats. And so it's just getting other people around you where you don't feel like you're alone in the midst of all these changes. There's also Positive Psychology Today that can have some techniques and tools to help you. There's Amador Behavioral Health, which is a great local resource. And then there's also us, Nexus Youth and Family Services. We are glad to be able to help in any way that we can. And so thank you so much for listening. please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. We're located at 601 Court Street in Suite 210, and the number that you can reach us at is 209-257-1980. Thank you so much for listening today. We really appreciate it.